Hey, this is Jake Eddy, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass.
Hey everybody, welcome back. As you might have guessed from that introduction, we have something a bit different this time. I've got an interview for you. I've been chatting to Jake Eddy, who's guitarist for the Becky Buller Band. He's also got a great new record of fiddle tunes out, which is just called Jake Eddy, and you can go and find that on Spotify, and I really recommend it. Kind of listen to that. We had a really cool conversation about all sorts of things, about how to practice, about some of the cool stuff about bluegrass and how he grew up listening to it and playing it, a bit about his 1951 D18, and just a really cool chat. A super nice guy, and really enjoyed it. That's it. I'm going to let the conversation start, and I hope you enjoy this as much as we did. Hey, so I've got a guest with me today on the podcast. We've got Jake B. Eddy from originally from Parkersburg in West Virginia. Is that right, Jake?
Yeah. Born and raised West Virginian.
And Jake is kind of a bluegrass musician who plays all the instruments, but guitar is currently his main focus. He's in the Becky Buller Band and also has a new album out, which we're going to talk about soon. But I think it'd be great just to get an intro to you, Jake, and a bit of your story, how you got into bluegrass, what your journey's been.
Sure, man. Well, my background is, it's not too atypical from what you'd see in a lot of people from where I'm from. I have a pretty musical family. My mom's a songwriter, and she played banjo and guitar, and my grandpa was a guitar player, and he played banjo and played bass, and all my aunts and uncles played things and sang, and so, being around music was not anything necessarily special or out of the ordinary. When I was a kid, just kind of, part of daily life, kind of being from Appalachia and being from a musical family. So playing music was always happening at get-togethers, cookouts, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all that kind of thing. Everybody's always have instruments and playing music, so it seemed kind of like the natural thing to do.
Was bluegrass the music that you heard as a kid? Was that what you were around?
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the only music that I heard coming up, like when I was really young, until I started getting into school and stuff like that. But it just seemed like the thing to do. Everybody in my family, kind of started playing bass a little bit when they were young, just because it's kind of like, you can teach someone to play two notes back and forth, like a kid can figure that out, right?
Yeah.
And then all of us basically moved on from that, except my brother, who's now is a real bassist and not just like a two-note, kind of guy. He's like, he stuck with it. But, kind of starting with something simple like that, or learning a few chords on the guitar, or a roll on the banjo or something from our grandpa or from our mom. And then, but they weren't necessarily pushing music on us. They kind of just, if we wanted to do it, we could. If not, that's fine too. It wasn't like, no pressure from them. But I think kind of having that environment and having them say, you can do it if you want, you don't have to. I think that kind of made it easier to want to,
Yeah, sure. And were you playing music largely with your family then, or were you heading out to sort of local bluegrass jams and playing with other people too?
Yeah, so it was mostly with my family, but other people too. My grandparents actually hosted like a bluegrass jam, concert kind of thing once a month at a local venue since I was a kid. So it was like, local bands could go and sign up and do a set on, like, they would have a sound system there and serve like food and drinks and stuff like that. And then there'd be jamming, and we would go to bluegrass festivals and stuff like that, obviously. So, it was everywhere, and it just seemed normal to me. Like, I know a lot of people that you hear will say they had some kind of aha moment, like, oh, I heard Earl Scruggs on the radio, and that's what got, and for me, it was there before I even realized, so.
Yeah, and what age are you now? You're early 20s, is that right?
Yeah, I'll be 22 next month, so.
So was there a point that you sort of started to gravitate a bit more towards the guitar, or do you still kind of cover all the instruments?
Yeah, so I can get myself in trouble with a bass or a mandolin, right? I mean, like, I can play enough to hide, but really, I always played banjo and guitar primarily. I played banjo a lot more when I was younger, because my grandpa was kind of more of a guitar player, and then when he kind of got more into the banjo, we would kind of switch off back and forth. But meanwhile, when I was in school and stuff, I was kind of getting into jazz and getting into some of that, and that's basically was all on guitar. So I think guitar has always been a primary focus of mine, alongside, a little more banjo when I was younger, but yeah, not, but yeah, probably guitar's been the main one for at least like, I don't know, about 10 years or something.
You can definitely hear a bit of that jazz influence in a couple of tracks on your album.
Thanks, man.
There's definitely bits that sort of lean that way, some phrases, a few little chord changes and bits that you can hear that influence in there, definitely.
Thanks, man. And I try to, like, on the record, I try to kind of pick musicians that I knew could also go that route. If the wind blew that way on the session, I wanted that to kind of be an option. My brother's a great bassist in the bluegrass realm, but as a jazz player too. And Corey Walker, who played banjo on there, is pretty into jazz. So, I mean, we had some jazz minds at work there for sure.
And you tend to find, my experience, you tend to find that most of the bluegrass players have at least an interest in a bit of swing and the sort of, Grisman and Tony Rice influence stuff. There's, most bluegrass players seem to like a bit of swing as well.
Definitely, yeah. And, probably the reason for a lot of it is because of Tony and because of that, dog music stuff. Or,
yeah.
A lot of the kind of popular music still of the time back then was jazz. So there's like, you'll see some kind of crossover tunes or like, there's some things that overlap there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to sort of, there's so much similarity between bluegrass and jazz, but jazz has that slightly wider harmonic base generally, doesn't it?
Sure. And I think, bluegrass can go that way if you're careful, right? And not, you can probably definitely overdo it, but I love playing with bluegrass with people who have a little jazz background too, because that way, you can get a little glimpse of where it could go. But a lot of good bluegrass to me too is also about knowing when to like hold back and not maybe not go that way even if you were tempted to.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love. I've been listening to the record quite a bit over the past week, and not only is it's a pretty solid choice of fiddle tunes that everybody's going to know, but they're also not all played at breakneck speed. There's room for breath and phrasing and space in there, and I love that because so often bluegrass is sort of a race to the end and who can play fastest, and I love all that as well. That's great, but it's nice to hear stuff that's given room to breathe and swing a bit as well.
Sure, and and I don't know if this was like a kind of an intentional choice of mine or just happened that way, but the first thing was when we were going to make this record, we decided we're not going to overdub anything, we're not going to edit anything, we're going to play it on the mics, and if there's mistakes, if there's whatever, we're just going to keep it, right? Like warts and all. So
yeah,
like there's no overdubs on the record except for. There's like 2 bars on the end of a tune, a duet with Kenny Smith on there that we dubbed just because we thought it was a little like a little bit of a cleaner ending. But so other than that, everything on there is totally live.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? If you can leave the odd mistake in there, but if it's the last couple of notes, it's you want to finish things cleanly, don't you?
Sure. And we wanted it to be, like you said, like have some room to breathe and have room to really improvise and let some ideas develop and things. So, I mean, there's some quicker tunes on there, but not. I don't know. That kind of cliche about bluegrass flat picking, where it has to be like I don't think we need to hear any more versions of Blackberry Blossom at 300 beats per minute.
Yeah,
it's tired.
Which is good news for people like me who can't play it that fast anyway. Yeah. It's definitely true, and you listen to a lot of players I like. I like Bryan Sutton, who's on the album, obviously, sure. And Tony Rice is Tony Rice, and we all love Tony Rice. But even listening to somebody like Sierra Hull play the guitar, when people really connect the notes and let things ring through, and it's like a lovely long lyrical line rather than just a staccato burst of stuff. That always draws you in, doesn't it?
I think so, and I think that's probably some of that comes from that jazz influence. When you listen to good jazz players, they can take just a small melody or a small little motif or a little cell of something and expand on it and develop it into something beautiful. And that's like giving yourself time to do that. You can't do it if you only have 32 bars at 250, right? That's quick, So
yeah,
really I want to be able to stretch out and kind of develop some ideas and just see what happens. And so, yeah, I mean, I like playing at those kind of mid-tempo. And the thing is, too, about that really fast picking, like when you get on Instagram or you get on Facebook or something and you see players, you see me playing, you see you, Trey Hensley playing or whoever, all of us are playing quick on the internet, right? Everybody wants to play their best, fastest, shreddiest stuff on the internet. But half of that is almost like a marketing game. Maybe I'm telling all the secrets here, but the people if you want to get more students, or you want to get a gig somewhere, you want to get that's the stuff that's going to get people's attention. But when you come to see me at a show, I'm playing fiddle tunes at 120. We're not going breakneck all night or anything. So that's kind of, maybe a misconception born kind of by the internet, but it's the way it goes.
I think it's a really interesting point. I think when people come as a student to learn something, they're often drawn by the flashy stuff, but actually what they need, because you can't play fast unless you can play slow. So sure. What they need versus what they want. I mean, I signed up for lessons with Bryan Sutton on the Artist Works platform about a year ago, and I sort of thought, he's going to teach me some really clever stuff, and this is going to be great. And the first thing he said when I submitted the video was like, your arm's in the wrong place. You're playing really nicely, but you're totally choking the sound from the top. And if you can just learn to shift where your arm sits on the guitar and think about tone and think about the quality of the sound you're producing, you're going to get results. And it totally sort of blew me away, really. Just spent a couple of weeks relearning my picking style, and my whole guitar playing sounded better. So my slow playing sounded better and more clean. So when I play quicker, it sounds more together,
Absolutely, man.
I got what I wasn't looking for, but what I needed.
That's the thing. And I don't think that guitar students of mine have ever got exactly what they wanted in the beginning, but I think they do get what they need. Like, oftentimes I'll get a student, and this is not necessarily a dig on any of my students, but there's sometimes there's a misconception between what a teacher can offer you. And so, sometimes I'll get a student and the vibe is kind of like, okay, hey, Jake, I gave you the money. We got the lesson lined up. We're both here together now. What's the big secret, And I don't have any big secret, All I have is I think what a good teacher can offer a student is just accountability kind of thing. If I give you something to work on, something to fix, and in 2 weeks we meet back up again, it's not better. We both know that you didn't work on it,
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, I feel like almost what I offer to my students is just to kind of stay on them and make them do the work. I think a lot of times a student kind of will know what they need to work on, and they just need someone to kind of enforce that. And that's kind of, what a lot of at least my more advanced students, that's kind of where we're at, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and I think it's really true. That's a lesson in life, isn't it? Is there are really no quick wins. You're never going to jump up 3 steps in one go. It's all about putting in the work, finding the right processes, and just keeping going. Yeah,
and it's so kind of cheesy to say, but I tell my students all the time, like, if you really do show up and do it every day and stay on your plan and your practice regimen and everything, it will get better. It's just it's always more time than talent. It's if you put the hours in, it'll clean up.
We'll be right back with you just after this. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins. If you're attending the NAMM show in January, stop by the Collings booth to say hello to the team, get hands-on with their selection of customised acoustics and electrics, and check out some exciting new prototypes they're working on for 2024. They'll also have a few of their world-class artists on hand demoing various instruments. And if you can't attend, don't forget to follow their Instagram and Facebook accounts throughout the show for photos, videos, and the latest news. Collings guitars are hand-built from the Sound Up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If one of your 2024 resolutions is to improve as a musician, Peghead Nation is the place to go. They have 65 streaming video courses for guitar, mandolin, banjo, fiddle, dobro, bass and ukulele from some of the leading names in acoustic music. Courses cover bluegrass, old time, Irish music and swing, plus lessons dedicated to improvisation, theory and ear training. Your first course is just $20 a month, and you can add more for $10. Try any course free for a month with the promo code JAMALONG. Make 2024 a year of more music at pegheadnation.com. I mean, if I'm honest, one of the reasons I do the whole kind of Jam Along track podcasting in the first place is it makes me be able to play a tune well enough every week to record it for people to play along to. And that's my accountability,
Exactly.
That's me every week going, right, by Tuesday I've got to have a track ready. So I've got to put the work in.
And that's the thing and thankfully, like working with, Becky and having recording work and everything, that there's so many things that I have to do that are playing related. If I let my responsibilities down, like I could potentially not have a job, right? So that's that's a good enough motivator for me to play.
I mean, that's when it gets real, isn't it? So how did that gig come about with Becky?
So the deal kind of was, we were in this hell year 2020. There's COVID. There's no gigs. There's no nothing. And in the middle of it, my grandfather passed away, and he's who taught us all to play music and everything. So, my family's kind of in this sad state, for obviously.
Yeah,
and, so there's no gigs, there's nothing going on, and I don't have any other training really. I mean, I can work in a bar or a restaurant or something, or I could get a job doing, whatever. But so my big idea that I hatched to stay afloat during COVID was I bought this really old pickup truck. It was like a farm truck. It was like this big green truck with a wooden bed, and we started selling produce out of it with like free delivery for COVID. So people who didn't want to get out of their house. And the big thing was pumpkins. We sold them for like Halloween. I struck a deal with this pumpkin farm, and I grew some myself. And we got all these huge like carving pumpkins for Halloween, and we would bring it to people's houses in the masks and everything. And the kids would come out, take pictures with the truck, and pick out pumpkins to carve and stuff like that. So it was kind of a cute little thing. And we just were selling produce basically. We sold Christmas trees and wreaths during Christmas and stuff like that. So anyway, that was like my main thing because there was no gigs going on. And then when my family was on vacation after Christmas, we took this little trip out to a cabin in Colorado, and I saw the article about the Becky's band members like quitting or whatever. And I kind of talked to them, and I was also in part-time college at the time, but it was online. It was kind of, it sucked. My folks were, and I said, hey, like I'm going to quit school and go back on the road and try to get this gig. And so Becky called me, and I sent an email, and then she called me back and said I should come down and audition. And when I got back to town, I sold the truck to have money to go down to audition. And then I went down and auditioned and waited a while, and then she called me back, and that's it. Got the job.
That's great, and that's sort of been your main work, that, a bit of teaching since, has it?
For sure, yeah. And I was kind of teaching all through that, but it's, sometimes the teaching can get a bit, I burn out on it pretty quickly.
Yeah. That's cool. And have you had a chance to record with Becky yet? Has it been mostly touring work so far?
No, we haven't recorded yet, and I'm not sure when that'll happen. I'm sure it will. But yeah, just kind of touring it, and that's all that we've had time to do. I mean, we've been kind of all over the place, and we're about to go again. We're going to Minnesota, and then after that, we're coming back and doing the Grand Ole Opry.
Cool.
And then we're going to Maine, and then we're going to North Carolina, and then after that, I think the rest of the year is pretty tame after IBMA. So.
That's one of the hardest things being on the other side of the Atlantic, is seeing all these tour dates and things I could go and see and knowing that I'm not going to get to see them.
I know. What's it like there in the UK where you're at? Is there any live music going on, or is it still pretty lean?
Yeah, it's getting going again, and some of the sort of jam sessions in pubs are starting to happen again. It's starting to pick up a bit. Yeah, I mean, I've got tickets booked to see some stuff later in the year, and hopefully it's going to happen. So yeah, it'd be good to chat a little bit about sort of the bits and pieces people are really interested in. So what instruments you play? What's your main guitar at the moment?
Yeah, well, so my main guitar is my only guitar. Is it's a 1951 D18.
Cool.
And that's basically the only one it's not really the only one I own, but it's the only one I play.
And is there a story behind how you got hold of that guitar?
Yeah, so a friend of mine is a guitar teacher up in Ohio, in Cincinnati, and he had a student who was like an elderly man who was going to move into a nursing home, and he had my friend, which was his teacher, help him sell all of his guitars before he moved out, and that was one of them. That was like his main one, like his prized one, and so my friend hit me up and said, "Hey, I knew you were kind of looking for one. Is this, what do you think of this one?" I went up and played it, and it's a great, man. It's one of the best older Martins really that I've ever played, and I have for some reason kind of a connection to it. It just felt good from the moment I picked it up.
And that's the thing, isn't it? The year is a number. It's how it feels to you and how you respond to it, and it's a relationship, isn't it, with an instrument?
Sure.
And if it feels right, it feels right.
And yeah, and the old Martins, I mean, they're all good. Any old Martin you get is going to be good, but there's some that are really special. And and this is one of them. And like I played it up against last week. One of my buddies has a 46 herringbone, and I thought that my D18 was stronger than it. Not that it was bad, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I know how to play it, and like I'm used to it, and I know kind of what I can get out of it and what I can't. But
Yeah.
it's special, man. I like it, and people think I'm sometimes kind of stupid for flying with it and taking it everywhere, but I don't see the point of owning it if.
Yeah, I mean they were made to be used, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if it broke in half tomorrow, I'd say we had a good run.
Cool. I think it's a lovely attitude. I think it's very easy for stuff like that they're not going to make any more of, just to put them in boxes and let them sit there. And they're tools, they're instruments. They need to breathe. They need to be played. They need to, they only sound good for as long as you keep playing them.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cool. Do you find one thing I was thinking about earlier on, talking about you playing multiple instruments, and like for me, I come from a background where I didn't grow up with bluegrass. It's something I've come to later in life, and so I'm learning to play these tunes. They're not things that have been with me forever. Do you find learning a tune on different instruments is different, and you have is there a different version of Soldier's Joy you play on mandolin than the version you play on guitar? Does the instrument dictate the style of it a bit?
I guess a little bit. To be honest, I don't put in any time playing anything other than guitar. Like as far as sitting down and practicing or working up a tune, like for example, I have a gig on banjo tomorrow night, just a pickup gig with the band up in Ohio, and so I'll play a little banjo today probably just to make sure I still know how to do it. but no, I mean, just putting in time learning tunes or working up tunes, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, I mean, yeah, definitely there'll be some kind of style things that'll be different between them, but haven't put a lot of time into exploring that lately, so I'm kind of, I don't know if I have a good perspective on that.
Yeah. And what kind of, I think it's good because everybody basically listens to this podcast is learning to play a bluegrass instrument in some form. Are there any things you've learned from sort of learning yourself or from teaching or just being around the music that sort of tips you can give people on the best way to go about playing bluegrass or learning tunes, or just really good lessons you've picked up along the way?
Yeah, well, I mean, tons. But the big thing that I'm always telling everyone is like listening can be as important or sometimes more important than playing, I guess. So anytime you're in the shower or in the car or on your lunch break or whatever, if you can be listening to this music and really kind of just getting a deeper connection and understanding with it and the way it works and the way it sounds, and that's going to make you better. So listening is the big thing. And the second thing is use your metronome. Like there's so many good players out there that when they get in the studio or something, they'll fall apart because they're not used to using a metronome, or they're not, whatever. Like all the good players that I know really are practicing with a metronome pretty often. So that's a big thing that I'm always kind of getting on my students about.
Yeah, no. I played years ago with a bass player who could play great in his bedroom, but as soon as you stuck him in a room with other people, just couldn't hold time. And it's it's a common thing, isn't it? And music's a conversation. You need to get out and speak it with other people. I've been sitting here for the past year playing guitar in my room and recording a podcast and putting things out, but there's no substitute for sitting, particularly bluegrass, which is such a social music, to get out and play with other people and listen to them and realise that you're going to be playing backup for 95% of the time. And that's, it's a totally different thing, isn't it?
It really is. So, and that's the other thing. Like, make sure you're playing with other people. And the other thing that I talk quite a bit about is like if you're learning new tunes, try to do it with your ears first. Don't go straight to the tab or straight to the written music. Your ears are going to be way more powerful than you think, probably. And then the other thing is a lot of the tab and the things that are available online are not going to be. They might be accurate, but they might not be genuine. So, like, I'm from West Virginia. I'm from Appalachia. Like, I grew up with people who I feel like really knew the music in an honest, genuine kind of way. And sometimes on the internet, people, like just random people, have the freedom to put out educational things. You might not be getting something that is authentic.
Yeah, totally. And that's one thing I've been really clear with the podcast is that, I'm not an authority or an authentic player, or like I'm somebody learning to play an instrument like everybody else is. And it's a big part of it, I think. And I think that's one of the things that fascinated me when I started learning bluegrass fiddle tunes is there is no, like with a jazz standard, there's a definitive version of the tune. but there isn't with bluegrass. You hear Tony Rice play Redhead Boy is not going to be the same as hearing Doc Watson play it, and there's no one book that can take you back to the original source. So from my perspective coming at it, it's fascinating trying to work out which version of the tune to even start learning.
And not only will the melody differ a little bit, but literally sometimes the whole form will be different. Like, take a fiddle tune like Texas Gales. I don't know if you know that tune.
Yeah.
But you listen to like on the Tony Rice and Norman Blake recording of it, it goes like A, B, B, C, or something like that. It's a 3-part tune. But when you listen to, I think, like a Doc Watson version of it or something else, it might be like, you'll hear some people who just play 1A section, 1B section, 1C section. Yeah. Or, so like the actual length and form of these tunes can vary. So it can get a little overwhelming.
But that's what makes it so exciting. It's such a deep music. You could spend your whole life with it and never run out of things to listen to.
No, I mean, absolutely. You could spend your life with only like one album of it, not listen, not get things to do.
Yeah, totally. So what's next for you then? The gigs with Becky, are you thinking about doing another solo project? What have you got lined up?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different things, kind of half in the works and half not. So, yeah, the gigs with Becky are the priority thing. That's like my main gig. But as far as so we're doing the Grand Ole Opry September 3rd. That's a big thing that's coming up that I'm excited about. I haven't got to do that yet, so that'll be my first time on there. And then recording-wise, I got some different things in the works. I mean, we're kind of starting to have some conversation about what a second record would look like. Talking to musicians and kind of figuring out what, just what direction we're going to go with that. And I think the direction that I want to go with is, almost sort of stay in a similar vein as the first one and just get together with great musicians and have a conversation and play some cool tunes and just let it be what it is and just kind of let it go. And I think of sometimes going the more clean, like commercial-ish route where like you hear what you hear on Sirius, and they play some of my stuff. I'm not saying they don't play good stuff, but a lot of the newer things coming out have this very polished, perfect, like everything's tracked out, everything is auto-tuned, the solos are comped, everything's fixed. And like I thought that our, the record that we made was unique because it sounded like there was improvisation going on and it was live and it was kind of raw and had that energy. And I really liked that aspect of the music. So I wanted to stick with that and not lose sight of that.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I like about it is, if music is a conversation is two people talking to each other to work out what they mean. It's not a bunch of fully formed thoughts they deliver to each other. And so being able to hear that process happening, and you can hear it on your record, you can hear that, that you're playing around with things and things are moving. And I think that's what's so vital about it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And outside of my own record, like my brother's about to start making a record that I'll be pretty involved in. So that'll take up a bit of my time. And then also I got some like shorter duo projects in the works. Me and CJ Lewandowski from the Po Ramblin' Boys are going to go in the studio here pretty soon and cut a few tunes.
Oh, cool.
I've had some conversations with some other people about doing that. I don't want to give out too many names or whatever, but there's, I'm going to try to put out more than anyone.
Cool. So where should people go to find out about it?
Man, so my website's being worked on a little bit right now, but I can send you a link if you want to include that. It's just jakeeddy.com, but it's like I said, it's down at the moment. But I'm on Instagram. I'm the Jake Eddy, TheJakeEddy, and then on Facebook, my music page is just Jake Eddy, and then my personal one is the Jake B Eddy. So,
cool. Well, we'll stick links to all of these in the show notes so people know where to go to find your stuff and to find out about the new projects.
Yeah, BeckyBuller.com. That's where all our tour dates are.
Cool. We'll get all that on the show notes so people know where to find you. It's been great talking to you, Jake.
Thank you, man, for having me. I really enjoy it.
Cool. I really want to thank Jake for taking part in this. It's been really good fun, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. I've got some more interviews lined up over the coming weeks, so more on that to follow. Some really cool people to talk to. Starting off with a couple of guitarists, but I'm going to mix it up, and hopefully over time we'll talk to a whole load of people, some players, some maybe some luthiers, maybe some teachers. But I'll give you more on that as we build up the guest list as we go along. So thanks again to Jake. Check out the show notes for links to Jake's various pages and platforms and Becky Buller dates. And yeah, also want to thank Jake's couple of companies that Jake endorses, Didario Strings and Blue Chip Picks. But that's it for this episode, and we will speak to you next time. Happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.